Tales from my D&D campaign.
Previously,
they return to find Aldi Corso's plans gone awry. Dragon Sun and Desert Nomad face each other like samurai. Little One will brook no interference from the guys in a duel where 2 men enter, and 1 orc dies. Heading to the plot diagram, we've had to change the third spoon part of the quest from complete to in progress. Add a side quest to save D. Corso's steward. Add a big question of how the orcs learned about the artifact spoons. Plus, they just learned from 7 that after they left the lumberjack, it was attacked by a smaller warforged, then totally changed its behavior and stomped off to the southeast. But I'm sure we'll tie up some of those loose ends soon enough. So Little One beat Marp in that epic duel, and the other orcs just wandered off the way they had come. And Draven identified Marp's magic gear. His full plate made of scorpion was some weird orccraft stuff, a crude patchwork of magic, but it added up to a +2 full plate with a tiny bit of acid resistance, but a small penalty to fortitude saves. And he had an armor augment crystal that allowed him to sleep in his full plate. And Black's like,
he slept in his armor? How bad does it smell?
And Angel's like, better clean that thing. And Little One's like, what is the sword? The sword, as I mentioned before, is obviously a bastard sword of fine Eladrin craftsmanship. In game terms, it's a +2 cold iron shock weapon with an additional +2 bonus to initiative. Bear in mind that at this stage the party is using +1 weapons, which are worth about 2 grand. D&D's magic weapon ratings represent exponentially increasing cost, and the sword I just described is equivalent to about +3.5. Market value between 20 and 25,000 gold. And they're all like, whoa,
that's a hell of a sword.
So Little One equips the sword, and the full plate obviously goes to Black because it's better than the +1 armor he got from Caventeria, and he's the only heavy armor guy. And Black's like,
I don't think I can wear that.
Because Black the player is like,
I just can't see my character wearing orc scorpion armor. It's not him.
And I'm like, but it's an upgrade. And he's like,
I don't think Reginald Black would wear that thing. It's just not right.
So Little One equips the sword, and nobody equips the best army their party had ever found. Draven will just disenchant it later to aid in the crafting of other items. And Black heals Little One as much as he can, but they've spent a ton of their daily magic on buffs, most of which have worn off by now. That didn't mean they were ready to let those dangerous orcs run free in the countryside, though. Especially since they could come back and harass the city after the heroes depart for the last leg of their 3-part quest thing. So they grab their horses and ride out. The highway to the Elven lands curves gently northward, hugging the steep 30-foot cliff which marks the boundary of the Auric Desert. And Draven casts Fly again and uses it to scout, and when he spots the orcs in the distance, he drops down and they cast what buffs they have left, expecting a hard fight, and they spur their mounts and catch up to the orc. Wait, weren't there 2 of them? Either Naf had turned invisible or he was gone, leaving only the sorcerer, Dor, who had halted his mount to wait for them. And Draven casts Bands of Steel, and Dor fails his save, and that's pretty much the fight. The orc can't move much, and doesn't even try to fight back, but they keep their distance just in case as they interrogate him. And he's like,
you beat Marp. If you and your friends fight me, I'm dead, though I'll see what scars I can give you. We fight, or let me go. I won't be prisoner.
He must mean in the overall sense, because tactically speaking, he appears to be their prisoner. And Little One's like, where's the other guy who was with you?
You won't catch Naf. Naf is fast, and I made him faster. He knows the sand, moves like the desert wind. Naf thought Marp was Ka. Seeing Marp lose like that, one-on-one, probably has him scared. I bet he goes and join a really Ka crew. I bet he goes and join Kajord. Kajord is hella Ka.
And Draven's like, he just left you?
Orcs don't value sorcery, and I'm old and weak. I was lucky Marp let me in his crew. My days are probably over.
I'm shocked. I figured the one on the horse had to be the leader. Yeah, I was all worried, like, if the other guy was so strong. But Draven wants to know, how did you find out about the spoons? Apparently many orcs do not value information or secrecy, because when they ask something, Dor totally tells them.
In the desert, at high sun, I was granted a vision by the gods. Infernus, the tester, showed me your spoons. Each is an artifact. Not a weapon, not a shield, but something with great power to alter the world. And if we proved worthy, one of them could have been ours. Then Grunch, the warrior, showed me that the dwarf city held a great challenge. Opponents who might be a match for the 3 of us. Of course we had to seek you. And in my vision, the gods showed me the road to travel.
And Black's like,
so this guy got high or sunstroked and led them to rob our town?
Or had real divine visions. Is that really all it is? That's really disturbing. I mean, he did know about the spoons, but they'd been talking too long, and Dor began insisting that they had two options. A, kill him, or B, let him go. He would not remain a prisoner. And they had all the relevant information, and they weren't overly inclined to set him loose like they had with the Warbond halfling sniper. And despite his crude speech, Dor was not stupid. He could clearly tell they were moving towards option A, so when Angel comes closer to enact that option, he casts Still Maximized Fire Burst for 40 damage, and they're like, 40 damage? What level is this guy? I thought he was weak. Turns out he was actually the same level as them, lower level than Marv, using a once per day ability he had. But this 10-foot flaming shockwave of friggin' 40 damage blasts out from Dor, and Angel is right in the middle of it and doesn't have 40 hit points, which means that if she fails the saving throw, she could, die, but what she does have is evasion, so that when she rolls and makes the save, she totally backflips out of the radius, taking 0 instead of half damage. After that scare, they finish him off in a much more urgent fashion, and if Little One's dual victory had left any doubt at all that all orcs had to be taken seriously, those doubts were gone. They didn't like that the other orc, Naf, was getting away, but they couldn't see him, and there was little desire to ride into the dunes, chasing a hasted desert nomad whose armor created a concealing cloud of swirling sand. So they head back to the chasm, and that night Little One cannot buy a drink in the dwarven town. In fact, the inhabitants have already started calling him Orc Slayer, which in this setting is one hell of a badass nickname. And they finish up their crafting and buying and prepare to head out in search of the missing steward and the third spoon, and DeCorso's magical advisor, Iron Veins, finally explains what the heck the steward's expedition was all about. Long, long ago, before the Shadow War, the dwarves lived in their three dwarf holds in the mountains of the Iron Sea. Instead of being full of dwarves and halflings, this southern area of the continent was held by two ancient civilizations, the Atarans and the Adar. In the present, the average person knows 3 things about each of them. The Adar were a mysterious people with great knowledge of psionics, who left behind odd crystals throughout their lands, and they disappeared with little warning. The Atarans were the first artificers, they created the Warforged, and they all died of a mysterious plague. When the last of the Atarans died, the Warforged did not have the complex artificing skills needed to perform their own long-term maintenance, and within 300 years virtually all of them died, except ones that placed themselves in a form of suspended animation, like the Warforged robot Lumberjack does between logging cycles. But the Atarans clearly possessed highly advanced thaumaturgical technology. In fact, it is said that the Thrashing Seas, the stretch of water between the Tark coast and the Ilud highlands, that whole area was actually farmland for the Atarans, and when the sea level rose, their devices kept the waters back until, thanks to the plague, they could no longer maintain the barriers and it all flooded. Nowadays, Iron Veins explains, dwarves search for and occasionally find ancient Ataran temples, and in his research Iron Veins found evidence that one such facility existed between a specific set of landmarks down south near the Diamond Coast, and DeCorso shared that knowledge with Don Horatio, who owned the land. And Horatio's men looked there and did find a temple, and beneath it they found the entrance to the facility, which the records called Ginneron. But Don Horatio didn't have trained archaeologists, and didn't really want to risk his men, because those ruins could be dangerous. So they made a deal, and DeCorso put together a team, led by his steward. And now they were lost, and he received word that several weeks ago Diluvians killed some of Horatio's guards outside, and slipped into Ginneron behind them. DeCorso had every faith that the PCs could handle any fighting, so he put together a small team to help with the other aspects of their task, including archaeologist Greypike, who had spent years Indiana Jonesing around the abandoned dwarf holds, and also Tirim, a young cleric of Moradin, because clerics are awesome. And speaking of clerics, as they are about to set out from town on their horses, the crowds part before a badly scarred dwarf being chased by a healer from the city temple. And the running dwarf was like, "Wait, Orc Slayers, take me with you!" This was actually the supervisor from the dwarven mine, who they had rescued at one point in the first adventure. Supervisor Huevo had been kidnapped by the drow and suffered unspeakable torture under the dagger of Caventeria. When they left the mine, they had put him in the care of the local temple, hoping they could heal his horribly scarred face and spirit. And the priest is like, "You need more time to recover from your ordeal. Please, Huevo." And he's like, "Don't call me that. My name is Daggerface. Please, take me with you. I know you're going on a rescue mission. I want to make myself useful. I want to get out there and kill monsters like you do." And they're all like, "Okay." And they carefully consider the pros and cons of taking Daggerface along.
I'm not sure if it's a good idea.
Let him come. What's the worst that could happen? He goes psycho, kills a bunch of our NPCs, and runs off into the woods? Would that be bad? Probably. Yes, that would be bad.
I'm just worried he will turn into a supervillain.
I don't know if that's more likely if we bring him or if we leave him behind.
He may try to follow us.
We should make him wear a mask. And I'm like, yes, if there's ever been a way not to make someone into a supervillain, it's by making them wear a mask. But with some trepidation, and a quick prayer from Tyrim, they find Daggerface a horse, and then the 7 of them, not counting 7, set out for the mysterious ancient temple of Ginneron. There's a lot of ground to cover. It's a 3-week ride to Don Horatio's Estado, near the coast. They considered taking a slight detour to Bankton to follow up on the contacts named by the Warbond halfling sniper, but decided to save that for the return trip. One quest at a time. The roads in Tark are relatively safe in most places, but if I simply fast-forwarded 3 whole weeks of travel, we would lose the sense of distance, the sense of scale. So I described the countryside a little, but mainly I tried to add the sense of time passing with some conversations between the NPCs, because apparently I like talking to myself. I like a month-long ride as much as the next fellow, but it's too bad we don't have any Eldritch Eyes. I bet Iron Veins could get us there in a snip. You're a good kid, Tyrim, but you don't know a thing about mages. Iron Veins is smart and good at his job, but it ain't your average wizard that can teleport across countries and such, even with eyes. For that, you need a really powerful caster, like Madrigal or Crystalfoot. Eldritch Eyes? Yes, the players learned what Draven's character already knew, that any teleportation spell with range longer than Dimension Door requires a special material component in our setting. Eldritch Eyes are pretty much any eye from a sufficiently powerful abomination, although only the big eye counts on beholders, because otherwise they'd be worth like a dozen. Why the restriction? Because the world just doesn't feel as big and important if, as soon as they hit level 9, they start teleporting around all willy-nilly. So they continue down the road for another week or so when they are jumped by a pair of trolls. Come on, no ride through a D&D countryside would be complete without some random violence. So Draven casts Fly to get out of reach, and the others, including the NPCs, dismount as fast as they can and get ready to fight these armored trolls. Armored trolls? Trolls don't usually think about defense, because they regenerate from wounds faster than a level 1 warrior can hurt them. Also, they're pretty dumb, but the bigger one hits fairly hard, and Tyrim Bull Strength Little One, and Daggerface tries to beat on the trolls with his Dwarven War Axe, but fails horribly due to bad die rolls, and Greypike scores some lucky hits with throwing hammers, helping to chip away a bit, and Draven blasts a big one with the fire one, but it resists a bunch of the damage, which raises all kinds of red flags because immune to fire trolls are one of those things that feels really unfair. But Angel, Black, and Little One do enough damage that the 5 hit points a round of regeneration does basically nothing, and the trolls go down in pretty short order. And it turns out that fire resistance was just a cheap magic cloak that works once a day, and the troll's armor is pretty crappy, all stitched together from regular-sized armor. But the big one actually had a magic amulet that was boosting all its natural attacks, and all taken together, it was a little alarming that these two had been equipped so well compared to the 0 equipment used by standard D&D trolls. Still, the players piled up their bodies and burned them to ashes, leaving nothing but their steel-trap-like indestructible jaws. And Little One's like, indestructible? Oh yeah, it doesn't come up often, but it technically is common knowledge. You can't even scratch them. And Draven's like, wow. And Little One's like, we need to make weapons out of them or something. They are also said to be very bad luck. I'm gonna mount a set on my shield. That's pretty badass. So unfazed by vague superstitions, sporting indestructible trophy jaws, they ride on through more chatter between young Tyrim and the much older Greypike. I don't put much stock in religion. Are you telling me you don't believe in the gods in Moradin? Don't be ridiculous. Everyone knows there are gods, but you can't tell me they're as active now as they were back in the old days in legends. Forging a stone shield, fighting with the smith, starting trouble or ending it. Where's all that today? Just because you don't see that doesn't mean they aren't out there. Why, when Moradin came to Egregor, no one knew at that time that he was our god. So then who did the priests worship back then? Our prayers were still to him, even then, but we did not then know his name, nor his countenance. You know, the gods go by many names. There are some orcs in the desert who pray to a god called Infernus. Infernus, they say, is a god of fire and of creation. A god who rewards those who have the strength of will to pass through the tests of life. Sound familiar? You're taking religious advice from bloody savage orcs now? I'm just saying, I know plenty about the gods. It's religions I don't much care for. And I bet the priests, in Moradin's time and before, had a name to pray to. So after a month of horseback riding and random tidbits of setting information, they reached Don Horatio's lands, and they head directly to the site of the long-buried Itaran temple called Ginneron. If not for the dwarven encampment, you'd never notice the overgrown mound of dirt they are guarding. And Sergeant Grimboot of Don Horatio's guard meets them and leads them around to the entrance, where they spot a Kuatoa sitting on a log staring at the dirt mound, while most of Grimboot's men pointedly ignore him. And Black's like, what the? They're okay with this? It's from the less evil side. Yeah, but still. Sorry, I should have warned you. Envoy Lacoon, Don Horatio's lewd liaison, generously stationed 2 of his guards here. They take turns watching the tunnel in 6-hour shifts, because supposedly KTs can see through their damned invisibility. Supposedly. I am Muru of House Skolov, And Grimboot explains that the dwarves near the south and east coasts trade a lot with the Lubes, because they have a mutual interest in protecting their shipping from the devils. That's why most of the Dons of the Diamond Coast have a KT envoy to help them adapt to Diluvian tactics, and each envoy has a few bodyguards, like Muru here. And Angel's like, Lude? And Muru buds in, apparently these Darvu find long words like Illude too complicated, so they call my people Ludes, and they call Diluvians devils. Not that I would argue the latter characterization. I told you before, my men don't like being called Darvu. I'll call you Dwarfs when you call me Illude or Kua. And Black's like, he kind of has a point. But Grimboot turns red, like hell, and he turns to the party. Do you know what Kuatoa means in their damned language? And Angel's like, I know, don't I? Yes, you do, but they beat you to it. It means masters of all. Our ancestors were a humble folk. And Draven's like, what? And the others aren't thrilled, but they actually have to physically hold Draven back, partly because I was way too subtle with the sarcasm on Muru's humble crack, but mostly because he's so pissed that everyone's been calling the KTs masters all along, and for a brief moment the Artificer totally loses it. But they manage to avoid starting a fight because they don't want to cause a major diplomatic incident, and plus there's supposed to be some actual Diluvians they could be killing beneath their feet at this very moment. So the party enter the narrow tunnel, down through the packed dirt, with Tyrim, Greypike, and Daggerface close behind them. Grimboot didn't follow, as Horatio had forbidden any of his men to venture into the dangerous ruins. About 20 feet down, they find a cozy little space, relatively Spartan and utterly spotless, with no exits. The Atarans like to build temples underground, and the entrances were covered over by the passage of time. But the deity they worshipped, whom they called Ataru, was a god of art and creativity, a little like Moradin. And sometimes the temples themselves are just antechambers at the entrance of deeper research or fabrication facilities. Nobody had mentioned that this temple had 2 functioning warforged in it. But there they are, all skinny and blue. Clearly not combat models, like no armor or anything. Just cleaning and dusting and junk. One of them looks up and he's like, welcome to Ginneron Temple. And Draven's like, how long have you been active? And the Warforged seems surprised to have anyone pay attention to him. It has been several months since the temple was reopened. I must say, it was quite a mess. And you've just been cleaning since then? Like I said, it's spotless. And the little one's like, so where's the underground base? But it looks like they'll have to search for it. Next time on Tales from My D&D Campaign. Actually, I lied. The Warforged is like, oh yes, the facility's over here.